My colleague with the Irish Examiner, John Fogarty, wrote a very interesting article today. He released it in the Examiner. It's basically about the sin bin, that it's the great leveller, and rather than the sin bin in the past, whereby somebody has to be forcibly substituted in Gaelic football, and in Dublin's case, someone is black carded and someone of fairly equal quality is brought on. Now you're just losing the player for 10 minutes, so it's actually hurting the team in a far more tangible way than before, because if you can almost tactically just get someone black carded if you wish and bring someone on just as good. And also the fact that you're now down to 5 substitutes, it's kind of leveled up the playing field. So it's an interesting article from that point of view, and it got me thinking a little bit more about the sin bin. And then John went on to talk about the possibility of kind of more substitutes, or rolling substitutes like you'd have in the AFL. And a quote from Dessie Farrell, he was sort of, rather than saying it would benefit Dublin and Dublin only, or teams up at the very top because they have such strong panels, and obviously to the detriment of others. Dessie Farrell said, the Dublin manager, I think just generally if you look at other sports, there's a tendency to roll out more and more subs on and off, and what that does is keep up the tempo of games really high, and that's what spectators and fans want to see. That's fair enough, and obviously he's going to pitch the story from his point of view, because we do know it would help Dublin, certainly right now, if you had rolling substitutes with the depth of that panel, and guys who don't even get into 26 at times, who are probably of a higher standard than some other Midland to lower counties. It's definitely going to benefit Dublin. But I kind of had an exchange with John over Twitter there, and I was kind of saying that if there was rolling subs, there's a fair chance that fewer players across the country would walk off their panels because they get more game time. And also I think if you're with a county and you're not getting game time, you're probably just hanging on the panel for a long time trying to see if you can get that chance. I think if you get the game time at the top level, you're automatically going to either be found out or you're going to improve, because it's only when you play at that level, at that top level speed, get used to the intensity, get used to trying to make decisions under the extra level of pressure at the very, very elite stage, that you only find out if you're good enough. And I think you definitely improve the more you play in that environment. That's kind of the point I was making to John. Also, just to take it on, and not that John wasn't necessarily disagreeing either, and just to take it on a bit more, would it benefit just the big teams, or over a course of a couple of years, would rolling substitutes? Now, is that a rising tide that would lift all boats? Because it wouldn't be just, even just to jump to underage level, it wouldn't be just Dublin who are getting to use, for example, 30 players on a given day and they're all getting game time. You're talking about across the country, teams are improving all of their players, and all of their players are getting probably similar type of exposure to playing at that level, whether it's club, county, whatever it might be. It might be hard to police, of course. We know how tough referees have it anyway, and we're only giving them more and more jobs. But another thing that I was looking at is how unfair, like, if more players are getting game time, that probably means you're going to have a bigger panel again in case you get injuries. So at the moment we know that teams are, having to get 26 to tog, and I've definitely showed up to championship games at maybe the likes of Croke Park. You show up a couple of hours before a big championship game, and you have a group of 5-6 players who weren't picked for the 26. They're outside the panel. Feels unbelievably harsh, and you'd see them standing outside, and you're like, those players are training there for the last 9 months or the last 5 years or whatever. To think that they're not even allowed to tog out feels harsh. Now I know the GAA obviously have to draw a line somewhere, but another thing I was thinking about, Ballyhale, Ballyhale didn't have all their players tog for the All-Ireland final. Definitely that was a point made. Tipperary, the All-Ireland last year, the players that didn't tog, they all had jerseys on underneath their tracksuits and with number 27 on them all. But games have to evolve too, so maybe this is a direction. And I mean, I'd be very curious to hear what people think. Is this something they'd like to see come into GAA, hurling and football? Like, games have to evolve, and I often reference the NFL when I'm talking about sports, whether it comes to rules, whatever it comes to. But like, that used to be a game where it was more or less 11 players playing both sides of the ball. And what I mean by that is the same 11 players would play attack, and then the same 11 players would play defence. But over time, things evolve. And, you might, if you look at American football now, it's very rare that you'd see anyone in the defence also lining up for an attacking play. You'd see it the odd time. But these days, rather than just 11 NFL players with a few subs or a couple of guys who are specialists, you now have sidelines where there's the guts of 50 players there. Now, I'm not saying we want to get to that level in Gaelic football or hurling, but the point being is Are we getting to that stage where we want to evolve a little bit more? Like, do people think that more players are likely to hang on, which are mid-range counties, if they feel like more players are going to be used on a given day? I'll get a chance. If I don't get a chance this week, there's a fair decent chance that I get game time next week. Or is it just going to favour the dubs? So let me know what you think. I certainly think it's worth teasing out a little bit more to see where we're going. And in terms of the sin bin being a bit of a leveller, it's hard to see how it wouldn't be, but of course, if the weaker teams start getting more black cards, which could happen, like imagine if you're playing Dublin and you're a weaker team, they're running at you constantly, getting in on goals, you're probably going to pull down a player or two, sin bins, and all of a sudden a team is down to 14 men, 13 men. I mean, what's going to happen? It's going to happen during the summer at some stage where there's more than a couple of people sin binned on one side of the field and maybe on both, and it could be a little bit kind of comical at that stage. Hard to see. Hard to know. We'll see how it pans out. But let me know definitely on your thoughts on maybe rolling subs. Thanks for watching Our Game. Don't forget to like and share the videos, and if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe.